Boogity, 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 boys. Let's go. Smash the like button, subscribe. Let's get it. Let's go. Good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another episode of High Top Sports. It's not necessarily the best day of the week, but it's pretty damn close. Happy Monday to all of you. It was a fantastic weekend. Friday was an absolute banger. That show crushed. You guys showed a ton of love and a ton of support. You love Sheldon in the kitchen, apparently. We might have to make a reunion there. Hopefully we find ourselves in the kitchen a lot this season. We're going to talk about some recruiting today with Mr. Cam Parker. Really excited to have him back on. Then talk about some transfer or some portal news. We've been talking about it, but it's about time to wrap it up, encompass all of it together. Some offensive line talk. People are starting to realize and recognize what Jake Slaughter brings to the table, what I've been saying this entire time. But all in all, good stuff. Let's have ourselves a day. And without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Cam Parker. Cam, how you doing, big guy?
Hey, it's good to be back, man. It was a little bit of a chaotic couple weeks. I thought I was going to be off the Gator beat for a little bit. An 11th hour offer came in, and I'm excited to be back. So, it's a lot of fun, man. I'm glad I don't have to move again. I'm tired of moving. So this is a lot of fun, man. I'm happy to be back.
Man, I'm happy to have you. We were just kind of getting like a nice little rhythm going. Then I lose all the guys that I'm building relationships to and talking with. I was like, golly, leave me in the dark here, boys. So I'm happy to have you back and be able to talk recruit with you, get the inside scoop. I know you're working with a lot of local guys currently starting to get ramped back up. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Two local guys that have been on the target. We've mentioned them a few times on the show. But let's talk first thing. We've got, I believe it's pronounced Jarquez Carter, correct? So Jarquez Carter is an interesting one from Newberry, right outside of Gainesville, very close to Gainesville, for anybody that's familiar with it. But this is somebody that, in my opinion, was Coach Chapman's very first target. I feel like he hit campus, and then Carter became a very extreme interest. He was one of the early recruits on with the during this Chapman era, and had a lot of great things to say because he's obviously visited before, and he was one of the first recruits to come out and say there's a different emphasis in these spring practices, and seems to be leaning heavily towards Florida, and you had a chance to talk to him just this past week.
Yeah, you hit the nail right on the head with Chapman, being one of the first targets. One thing that Billy Napier has done pretty good at has been recruiting out of Florida's own backyard. That was something that Dan Mullen was kind of hit or miss with. But you see that with Billy's group that, I know Miles Graham transferred into Buell's, but they're able to keep him. I know that they decommitted, but they had Kendall Jackson and Creed Whittemore at one time.
Yep.
They've been heavily on the walk-on route too at some of these local guys. But when you get the rare 4-star in Alachua County, you can't miss on a guy like that. And Jarquez Carter is the big name, and he is the big name in Alachua County right now as far as recruits go. And again, it was a guy who he was on campus pretty early. He loves Gerald Chapman. I talked to him about that a little bit. He loves the energy that he brings. But again, with a guy in your backyard, it kind of is we don't have to go as far to go get this guy. He's right in our backyard. Let's go after him. And that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. The big thing with Carter, though, is he's going to take his time on his recruitment. That is the vibe I completely. It seems like a heavy Florida lean. If you're Florida, you probably should have it be that way, considering, again, he is in your backyard. He's visited before. He's a Gator fan. All this stuff. But when I talk to him, he is going to take his time with his recruitment. He is in no rush to commit anywhere. I asked him about if he had any plans for a commitment date or a top 5 or top 10, and he said he's not sure yet. Maybe a top 8 or top 6, something in that range. And that was when I talked to him. He said he was going to do that after Newberry finished spring camp. They finished that last week. So hopefully sometime either this week or next week, he'll start releasing that. The big thing is this entire summer for him is going to be visiting schools. He has a massive visit list scheduled for him. He's got Florida at the end of the month, as everyone knows. The very next week, he's up at Penn State. And then right after that, he's at UCF. So this is a kid who, he's probably a Florida lean. I could definitely see him playing in the orange and blue, but he's going to take his sweet time with his recruitment. He's going to go visit these schools while he can. He's in absolutely no rush to commit anywhere. But again, like you said, Florida got a jump start on him because he's a local guy. Gerald Chapman hit, just hit it running on recruiting, and this was a guy that they had gone after pretty early. So Florida lean, but I mean, it's probably going to be a while before there's any commitments. We're still waiting on a top 6 or a top 8 from him. He has a good idea of what schools maybe. Didn't say those to me, but again, you look at he's visited UCF multiple times. He's going to go visit Florida again. He's taking a trip up to Penn State, UCF. Those are probably the 4 schools that stood out to me when I talked to him.
Okay.
But again, we're just gonna have to wait and see because he's. I can tell you right now, he's not in any rush to commit anywhere.
6'2", 270. He's got incredible strength and moves like Eugene Wilson. He's got some speed for a big boy at defensive line, and he has 3-star composite 4-star on 247. And I've got to believe he's probably trying to take a little bit of a bet on himself. Of I feel like I'm undervalued, and I'd imagine that as the spring season happens, he rolls into his senior season because you take a look. This is his junior season tape. The kid looks incredible. Obviously, competition has a lot to do with that as well. That plays a factor into it. Size 6'2", 270 could put some weight on how this summer goes, could really make a big change for him and how his stock value rises. And that to me gives me that kind of vibe of like, look, I think that I'm being undervalued at the moment. And Florida has earned the right and the ability to say that we're great at evaluating talent. I mean, it feels like their last few classes will go after guys very early on. They'll have a great summer. They'll have a great camps. They'll have a great senior season, and their value just skyrockets. And that's when these big time offers and floods of NIL deals flow in, and you see Florida kind of slipping at the end there because we feel, hey, we've been building this relationship for quite some time now. What's going on here, and we are not really one to budge. But that's just kind of the way of the land. So I respect that, and that's interesting again with you talking to him. And we've talked about recruiting this cycle and this go around that the portal has a major impact with these guys now, and they've got to really take their time. You're not seeing guys commit as soon as they were before, and we've got obviously a big recruiting visits happening in the early parts of June. We saw a lot of guys commit in the early parts of June, so I'm sure we'll get a blunder of that. But you kind of see that first heavy commitment, then you have all the games, and at that point, we didn't see too many commitments during the season because at that point, it's like we're watching games, we're going to games, we're seeing is the talk really being backed up on the field, and then obviously towards the end of the year, which this season is going to be a really big year for Florida, and I'd imagine a huge impact on recruiting as well.
Yeah, and another thing too, and I didn't really mention this in my Carter story, but I talked to multiple Newberry guys. There's a lot of guys who are getting some D1 offers, not necessarily being looked at by Florida, but some other schools. And I asked all of them about commitment dates, top 5s, top 6s, and what their timeline is looking like. And a big thing with some of them, and I imagine this is a big thing for recruits all around the state, is they're waiting to see what the state of Florida does with NIL. The FHSAA, I guess, met either last week or 2 weeks ago to discuss high schoolers getting NIL opportunities within the state. So
Okay.
they're kind of on that too. That's going to play a big part in obviously recruitment, as well as them being able to capitalize on their own opportunities as high schoolers. That's something to keep an eye on too. I don't know how much of an impact that'll have in collegiate recruiting. Obviously, it probably will, just because it always does. But how will that affect into some guys' recruitment as well?
Well, yeah,
Are
it's
there going to be
huge
more?
because again, you think about the more targets you're getting, the more popularity that you're gaining. That's going to create a bigger NIL opportunity for you and a bigger opportunity for you in high school. And you've seen guys drag out this process because it creates this drama and this dynamic, and all of a sudden, all of our eyes are on these guys because of the buildup, right? So now, if there is an opportunity for them to capitalize on it, DJ Lagway was a big one last year. I mean, him being committed to Florida, he would have made a killing off DJ Lagway gear if he was able to at Texas. He had gear people wanted his D2L, I think, or D2L hat. Couldn't sell it, obviously. Obviously, the YouTube channels being able to monetize those things. There's just so much out there. And even the other side of it, you can commit early and the fan base just buys in. You know what I mean? You just capitalize on wherever school you commit to. So that is a huge point. I didn't realize that was something that was in the works. So a big
and
reason
and
why.
the FHSA headquarters is in Gainesville. So you're looking at the Alachua County athletes are going to hear about this first. They're the ones who, I think the FHSA headquarters are right down the street from Buchholz High School. So these are the guys that are going to hear about this right away. Obviously with social media, news is going to trickle out pretty quickly. But these guys are going to have a better idea than anyone else about, is the FHSAA actually going to allow this? The FHSAA, I don't know how much you know, but they're pretty stubborn. They don't always like, changing the rules. It's a very weird group over there. They changed the classifications in the state of Florida only to go right back to the classifications that they changed them from 2 years later. So it's a very weird, system and organization with them. I know that they've been talking about this NIL thing for a little bit now, and now these Alachua County kids, because they're right there in the FHSA's backyard, they're definitely going to be keeping an eye out on this and what opportunities they can get, especially if you have a big school like UF in your backyard too. How, NIL being legal now for high school athletes, how does that affect with the University of Florida recruiting them? It's definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't think with Carter it's necessarily a big thing. It was more just something that was just kind of mentioned, and he wasn't the only one too. But it's they're keeping an eye on it, because why wouldn't you?
For
This is
sure.
something that's going to you. You obviously want to at least take an interest in it and see what's going on, because as soon as it gets legalized, you go have at it, go make money off of your name. That's what you can do now. So we'll have to wait and see how that affects everything with the FHSAA. It's going to be weird for a little bit until something gets finalized. But again, with Carter too, that just kind of, it feels like it adds to the, he's definitely not in a rush to commit anywhere. He's going to be taking a lot of summer visits. He's going to go to Florida. The big thing talked about with the Florida visit is he wants this visit to be the one that hits. That's what because I asked him, I was like, how was your
Okay.
previous visit? What are you looking forward to out of this visit? And he didn't go into too much detail, but he said, I want this to be the visit that hits. And, you look at Florida's visit list for the next 2 weeks, it's massive. I mean, this is probably going to be the biggest 2 weeks of recruiting before the Friday Night Lights camp. I mean, it's going to be huge for Florida these next 2 weeks with the guys that they're getting on
So
campus.
this
Excuse me.
weekend coming up from Memorial Day weekend and the following weekend, which is June
Yeah,
1st.
so they're so yeah, so they had a bunch of edits, and I don't have the list right in
No,
front of
you're
me, but they've
fine.
got
Yeah.
a lot of guys who are coming on campus the next 2 weeks,
Okay.
and it's a big back to back weekends for this program,
You
and
know, so
obviously with Carter being there, it kind of piqued some interest in the Alachua County area, but again, he told me this needs to be the visit that hits. He wants to, feel really good about this coming out of it, and again, with a recruit in your backyard, there's kind of no excuse to miss out on a recruit like this.
especially how
You've
long
got
they've been
more opportunities.
involved.
Yeah, like you have more opportunities than anyone to go see this kid on a weekly basis. At least send someone. So
Yeah.
it's definitely an eye on that. Probably is a Florida lean right now. Florida's probably the front runners, but he's in no rush to commit. How does Florida deal with that? What are they looking forward to? What are they going to do on this visit that makes them stand out above the schools that he's traveling out of state to go see?
What's interesting is so I last year we had the big Jubilee weekends in June. I called it Jubilee weekend because it was exciting. It was fun. I was preparing for it to happen again. I'm going on a cruise in June. I've been talking about this cruise because I was concerned that both recruiting weekends were going to happen at the beginning of my cruise and at the end of my cruise and smack dab in the middle. But clearly, Billy's watches the show and he shifted his weekends, which I appreciate greatly. Another point of that is it felt like last year we were kind of in the middle of visits. The fact that we have them this weekend and the next weekend feels like Billy's moved the timeline up a little bit as well, which speaks to everything just adjusting. Like I've said, that they've made small movements each year that they feel, hey, and we talked about it last year. Should they have been a little bit sooner? Should they've had it right? Like where should they be in this recruiting cycle? There's never a sweet spot with these guys, but if you can really make an impact, now you're comparing every school to that. And if you trust in your recruiting, you trust what you're doing, it's kind of that whole mindset of let's light the piano on fire, right? And go see if you can live up to this expectation. And look, that Jubilee weekend we had, that was first for a lot of guys, but not everybody. Getting this first weekend in May, if that is this weekend here, Memorial Day weekend, that's before a lot of schools, which I think is fantastic.
And again, to that, obviously people always talk about, last impressions matter. Whoever whoever gets the last visit for a recruit has a really good chance. First impressions matter too. I mean, this is the school that if a kid takes a visit to Florida first, he's going to compare every single visit he takes after to that Florida visit. So this is a huge opportunity for Florida to get these early visits because they get to make that first impression. A lot of these guys have been on campus before, but now that they're taking, actual official visits, they get to truly focus on it this summer because there's nothing else going on.
Sure.
Your first impression matter, and especially it matters to a local kid who has been a Gator fan. He's got a former teammate, or excuse me, yeah, one former teammate on the team, David Schmidt. It was a walk-on receiver from Newberry, and he's
Okay.
friends with Gavin Hill. He's friends with my. So these are guys who, the Alachua County high school football family. They all know each other. They all
Sure.
played youth football together. They all know each other through playing, the same teams or playing each other, and so that matters. Where you have a local kid who you've had before, who is teammates with one of your other guys, who is also friends with two of your big players that you got from the area. This is a big opportunity for Florida. And I get that Carter isn't the most highly ranked guy, but also he's not even in his senior year yet. He's a junior. There's still time for him to kind of keep building upwards because he's a borderline 4-star right now. There's
For
still time
sure.
for him to keep building and
I
get that 4-star, rise in the rankings if he continues to have strong performances. He had a really good, I think, rivals camp, if I'm not mistaken. He again, there's plenty of opportunity for him to grow up and get in the rankings a little bit higher because I know that that's what people care about. But as you said before, I think Billy and the staff, they've kind of earned the evaluation trust. The guys that they brought in are dogs, or excuse me, they're Gators, as
Hey,
as
whoa,
Billy likes to
whoa,
put.
whoa, whoa,
It
whoa.
got the Gator in them, you know. As Billy likes to say. It's again, this isn't like some of the Dan Mullen, not to bring up old wounds, but where they had quantity but they didn't have quality. Billy Napier certainly has quality to his recruiting classes, and that's shown that through the transfer portal and his high schools. I mean, every player that has been on the best player on the team the last couple of years have been Billy Napier guys. So I think to a point, he's earned the trust for his evals. Obviously, game day and performance on the field has a lot of work to be done. But as far as recruiting goes, I feel like he's earned a lot of trust to, we can trust his evals. If they want a guy, you should want that guy too. And Jarquez Carter
Good
is
point.
certainly a guy that want that Gerald Chapman wants. Jarquez Carter likes Gerald Chapman again, likes the energy that he brings. He's very much that type of that small town high intensity type coach, which that's how it is at Newberry, and that's what Jarquez Carter has been used to. So, I think Florida definitely has a really good opportunity to get one of the other really good local recruits in the area.
Great stuff. And look, I think a big thing about this weekend too, you're saying really kind of, hey, this visit's got to be it. They've all just been visits, unofficial visits. And Florida had
Yeah.
a lot of hype come out of their official visits last year. So it'll be exciting to hear and it'll be exciting to talk to some of these recruits. We'll definitely have to have you on once you're able to pick their ear a little bit about the difference, right? What was so great about the official visit? How much fun was it? The parents raved about it last time. I think that had a huge impact for us landing these guys in the second time through in the transfer portal. So they've done great on those recruiting. Again, I know people are going to say, I don't care about recruiting. I want to see wins on the football field. We'll get there. We'll get there. Let's talk about another one here that you spoke to. You spoke to his father, Cornelius Ingram, Gator legacy player, CJ Ingram. Currently on three, Florida leads the way. 3-star guy, overall athlete, plays quarterback currently. So you've got to imagine when you see these athletes, these star athletes, and they're playing quarterback, but they're labeled as an athlete. They're not quite sure where to place them, which has an impact on their star ranking. Joe Hayden, when I spoke with him, told me that he was recruited as a quarterback. Then was going to go to wide receiver. Realized he would never play as a wide receiver because Percy Harvin was in that room, plus everybody else. So he ended up switching to cornerback. When you got a kid like they can play wherever he wanted, it's just we just got to get him on the team. We'll figure out where to put you. That to me is where CJ Ingram fits in currently. Again, you spoke to his dad. How was that combo?
Well, it's good. And again, speaking of the athlete thing, Cornelius was a quarterback at Hawthorne and started out as a quarterback at Florida. They bring in this guy named Tim Tebow,
Mm,
so he switches to tight end, and it worked out pretty well for him. He's one of the all-time great tight ends at Florida. Now, the NFL career didn't work out as many expected because of an injury, but his son's kind of the same way, where he's a good quarterback. He had 31 touchdown passes last year, tremendous running the ball. But the big thing with this recruitment is he's a two-sport athlete, and it's not just like he's a two-sport athlete who happens to play another sport. He is a dang good basketball player. He is one of the better basketball players I've seen in a long time. He didn't play in Hawthorne spring game because he was in Indianapolis at a camp. And I don't know if you saw that too, but Anthony Richardson actually went out to go watch him.
Cool.
And so that was pretty cool to go see. And there's a picture of them two next to each other. And CJ might be a little bit taller than Anthony Richardson, which is kind of hard to believe because he's 6'5", but CJ might be a little bit taller than him.
Wow.
But he is tearing it up on the hardwood. I think he averaged like 24 points a game last year. He was the one, it's either 1A or 1R. I can't remember exactly what the classification is, but he was the player of the year. This is a kid who he is taking his basketball recruitment just as seriously as his football recruitment.
Interesting.
Sometimes they intertwine. Some schools are offering him as both. Florida is really focused on the football side, but his dad walked onto the basketball team at Florida. Maybe that's something that CJ can do at Florida too, and that kind of gets Florida over the hump. Because he tweeted about it in March that he's like, I appreciate all the media and the coaches reaching out to me about my recruitment. I have not made my decision about basketball or football yet. I have not, I'm not in any rush to make that decision. This is something I want to take my time with because he's got a whole nother season of summer basketball, fall football, and and winter basketball. So he's got plenty of time to kind of feel out this recruitment. And CI, when I talked to him, he was, kind of echoed the same thing where he actually doesn't know what CJ is going to do. He's like, if he could either focus on just football or just basketball, he could probably be a 4 or 5 star in both. But he's doing basketball practice, football workouts, school, basketball game, football workouts, football practice, school, and then quarterback training on the side. Like he's doing all these different things. The kid's got a hectic schedule. I could never do that now
I
as
got a
a
headache just
as a
thinking
college.
about it. Yeah.
It's insane, and so he's really dedicated to being great in both sports, and that's going to play a big role in his recruitment. Where funny enough, I was talking about this with Noah Ram. He's the high school sports reporter for the Gainesville Sun. Really good guy. We were talking about this too, and you know he could go play basketball. If basketball is his true love sport, which he was playing varsity basketball at Hawthorne well before he was playing varsity football. It could be something where if he gets a good opportunity at a smaller school to go play basketball, he could go take that route if he wanted to. He is a dang good basketball player. So that was the big thing with that. It was unfortunate I wasn't able to talk to him after their spring game. But you completely understand. You're going to go play at a big camp in Indianapolis. Go tear it up on the hardwood. And Hawthorne did pretty good without him. They won 42-7. But that was a big thing I talked about with CI was he is in no rush to make a decision about this. He and CI haven't really talked about what sport he's going to play, what school stands out. The big thing that CI said was whatever decision he makes, his family's behind him 100%, and they know it's going to be the right decision. This isn't a kid that's going to rush into his recruitment. This isn't a kid who, if he gets an Alabama offer at football, he's immediately committing. He's going to weigh out his options because basketball is just as much, if not more important to him than football is. So it's that in the way that the Jarquez Carter thing is with, we have to keep an eye on because of the visits and he's weighing all his options like that. For CJ, he's got basketball too. We've got a Troy Bolton situation over in Hawthorne. Love for basketball, love for
Let's
arts.
go.
We got
Little
CJ
high
Ingram
school
trying to choose.
musical.
So it's an interesting recruitment because I don't remember something like this in Alachua County probably happening for a long time. Obviously, with Florida, you get it sometimes. Like Walter Clayton took visits as a football player to Florida with with Javon Dexter. He took visits with him as a football player, went to Iona for basketball, and then eventually transferred to Florida to play basketball. So something to keep an eye on with CJ with that because of his love for basketball. Right now, he's getting bigger football offers than he is basketball offers. But if a big school offers him a football scholarship and say, hey, if you want to walk onto the basketball team, here's our coach, that could be something to keep an eye on too. So,
Okay.
we'll just have to wait and see. He's really dedicated to basketball right now because it's not football season anymore and spring football is over. He could play basketball for the rest of the summer and be just fine for the fall. So definitely something to keep an eye on there because obviously CI is a legend in Gainesville. He's a legend at Hawthorne. CJ has led them to back-to-back state championship games. He's got a third and he's got a fourth year left. So it's interesting too. Hawthorne has taken multiple visits, just as a team to the facilities. I know High kind of has the hookups because he's a former player, but CJ is definitely one to keep an eye on because Billy G is after him hard too. And you're talking about a guy who was there when High was playing at Florida. Now it's
Sure.
kind of deja vu where he's recruiting his son. It's Florida has a step ahead in that recruitment too because there's already that connection with the Ingram family. So
Outside of just the
it's been
legacy, there's a correlation of like, hey, I played for this coach as well too. Yeah, I know you're gonna be. I can pass my son off, and I know he can be a good hands. Same thing. I mean, Spikes is
yeah,
there too. That was a teammate of his
yeah.
as well. So
And that's a big thing too, because you're looking at two local recruits who they're in your backyard. There really is no excuse why you lose them to an out of state school. Not to mention, there's some personal connections already on the program. Florida's got a head start with both of these recruitments. It's just about going over the finish line. What do they have to do on these visits to get Jarquez Carter to commit to Florida and make the visit shine? What does Florida have to do to convince CJ Ingram that he's best suited for their football program, and not a smaller basketball program? And the other thing too, Khalil Jackson played for CI, so that's something too where Khalil Jackson can maybe help out a little bit too, and then talk to CJ about what it's like to play wide receiver in this offense, and not just say, I want you on my team. Here's all the good things, but a truthful, honest evaluation of what it's like to play at the University of Florida as a guy who played for his dad at Hawthorne. So again, the two recruitments that Florida has a head start on, something there's no rush for them to commit. It's going to be a long process, but I think Florida's in the long haul to get these two guys. And I wouldn't be surprised if they sign with the Gators eventually, but we'll have to wait and see because there's plenty of time for these guys to maybe decide to do something different. So, it's interesting because it's local, but there's some connections there to keep an eye on too.
for sure, I love it. Look, this is a great update on these two players. I know we're always trying to get more insight and intel on these recruits and how they're functioning. And like you said, a lot of these guys are going to be kind of waiting around and seeing. And it's great to hear about. I'm gonna say CI, but that's his dad, CJ, and just kind of his background and what he's focused on. You see a lot of these kids that have, their dads that played the game. They seem to have a more of a patient approach to the situation because they've got somebody who went through all of it. So their understanding of it's a little bit better than somebody who hasn't had that. And kind of he's playing that same role of like I know I have time and there's no need to rush on these things and play into his hand here. But Cam, it's always a pleasure, man. I appreciate you. I had 400 strong in here hanging out with us. Be sure to smash the like button. Tell them where they can follow you, man, on Twitter. Because again, now that you're ramping back into recruiting, and I'm sure we'll get some photos and clips. Won't you get your access back onto the field when we get some summer clips coming? I know that you're great at those. So tell them where they can follow you so we can keep up with you, man.
Yeah, I'm same Twitter account as before at Cam Parker 25. The site formerly known as All Gators is now Gators Illustrated. So you can find work. Same website as before, just a different name. I think it's at Gators Illust with a T, so a little bit of abbreviated. But if you look up Gators Illustrated on Twitter and Facebook, you'll be able to find it there. We added Bennett Solomon to the team. He's another UF grad. He's doing some remote baseball coverage for us too. So really, really appreciate that from him. And this week I'll try to have a story up about CJ within the next couple of days, some quotes from his dad, just kind of what we talked about now. And then Thursday or Friday is a local spring game, East Side in Gainesville, so a little bit of a Gainesville rivalry. But the thing what's interesting about that is Ernest Graham is now coaching at GHS as an assistant,
Oh wow.
um, under Ian Scott, who was a defensive lineman for Florida under Spurrier in the early 2000s. So, it's cool, man. There's a lot of former guys who are coaching in the area. We talked about CI at Hawthorne, Ian Scott, who played with the Bears when they went to that Super Bowl. He is the head coach going into his second year at Gainesville. Ernest Graham, after kind of not coaching last year, of course, Miles was at Buchholz. Now he's an assistant at GHS. I think Doug Johnson and Travis McGriff. I don't know if they're like actual assistant coaches at Buchholz, but I know that they're helping out with the program over there. Um, Doug Johnson's son, Trace Johnson, is another recruit to keep an eye on. He'll be a junior next year. He's a quarterback for the Bobcats. And then Keel McGriff is the son of Travis McGriff, grandson of Lee McGriff. He just transferred over to Buchholz from Newberry. He's at receiver, so a little bit of a connection there too. So a lot of former Gators in the area,
Yeah, I love that. Building
putting in.
building around it. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. And that helps too with Florida. If you got these formers with connections onto the staff at the university,
Easy
if
transition,
some of
baby.
these they break out in their recruitments because a lot of them are kind of lower 3 stars, mid-range 3 stars. If they can break out and get that 4 star and have a great junior and senior year, these are guys who could be in the orange and blue. So definitely keep an eye on that. I'll be at the GHS Eastside game on Friday. Going to try to talk to both Ernest and Ian, get some quotes from them about that, and it's exciting, man. And I think I like Alachua County football just because it feels like a small town a little bit. I've been
Sure.
covering it for about 4 years now. Now it's really getting interesting because you're starting to see that you have connection there too. So, really, really excited about that, and something that Gator fans should be keeping an eye on too, because there's a lot of good guys here, and they certainly could be wearing the orange and blue if they can have their recruitments break out a little bit more.
Absolutely. I love it. Somebody quoted Minshew Mondays earlier, which I love. So I did. I
I
love it.
love it.
Yes, sir.
I love it. I got called a Johnny Van Zandt on another podcast, so I'm loving the nicknames, man.
Yeah.
I thought about cutting my hair this week
But
after
you can't. You can't.
sweating so much and my
Yeah, I don't.
all gross,
We don't care,
and
Cam.
then all these compliments.
Put it in a
Like,
hat. Yeah, we don't care. Suck it up. You got to live up to the hype, man. Well, Cam, pleasure as always, and man, be sure guys to go give him a follow at Cam Parker 25 on X. Cam, we'll see you till next time, guys. Don't go anywhere. We got a few more things to go over, but I appreciate you, boss. Thank you, man.
Awesome, thank you.
Sir. Go Gators, ladies and gentlemen. Cam Parker there. Fantastic stuff. A lot of great information there about the local recruiting there at Gainesville. So, again, go give him a follow. He's going to be dropping some new articles. And, again, once Florida gets back on the football field, I'm sure he'll have access. We'll get some more insight on that. And we've got 2 big recruiting weekends. Real quick, though, let's give you a little timeline of what's happening here. This Wednesday, Mr. Dave Waters from Gator Breaks Down will be joining us. Yes, sir. We're doing another crossover show. We're rocking and rolling here, getting all the band back together, boys. It's going to be a fantastic show come on Wednesday. And we're working on getting on his show. First time ever. Going to be groundbreaking stuff. And the following week, we're going to have Will Miles and Nick come on the show to talk about the Florida Gator Bible, as I like to call it, their massive 3,000-page preparer, I guess, looking backwards and forward on Florida Gator football. Those guys are fantastic. They know their stuff. Super excited to pick their brains and talk to them in just a few weeks. So a lot of great shows coming up. Obviously, be sure to smash the like button and subscribe. But you know what we got to do, boys? We got to pay the bills. Okay, so let's not look at me. I saw you guys in the chat already talking about how your butts will be looking better because of the jeans you guys are out there and buying. I love hearing that you guys are getting your butts and you're looking extra thick. That excites me. That boys out there making work. All right, this is an urgent public service announcement. Think you've mastered the look in sweatpants and joggers? You're one step away from pajamas in public. Your significant other said you look like a slob. Time to show your sexy ass in jeans. If you take anything from our show today, it's the perfect jean. Just isn't another pair of stiff, uncomfortable, nut-crushing pants. They've cracked the code to solving all your denim difficulties, okay? The best part, they make 6 fits, from skinny to thick. I think somebody mentioned the thick. I put it up there. Waist size from 26 to 50 and lengths from 26 to 38. So whether you're a thick daddy, short king, or anything in between, 26, I don't even know what that is. I gotta ask Cody what he wears. Because 26, like that's crazy. That's like my son's size. They perfectly fit your body and accentuate your assets, pun intended. Trust us when we say these are truly effing perfect jeans. When you try them, you'll never go back. I saw some comments saying they love them. I love the fact that the chats buy it in. They got themselves some sexy denim. They're looking extra good. Got it fitting just right. So that's better than me telling you. You got everybody else telling you too. So I love it. Levi said, I told you it is coming up. It is coming up. Got to use the code HIGHTOP15 though to get yourself some nice, comfy jeans. I love them. Wore them today. They're in the rotation of my jeans on a weekly basis. It's finally time to stop crushing your balls in uncomfortable jeans by going to theperfectjean.nyc. Our listeners get 15%. They're giving them away off your first order plus free shipping. Huge. Shipping's like $12 a thing now. Free returns in case they don't fit. Jeans, sometimes they don't fit right. And you're like, whatever, I already got them. Free returns, free exchange. Send it back. When you use the code HIGHTOP15 at checkout, that's 15% off for new customers at theperfectjean.nyc with promo code HIGHTOP15. After your purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you F your khakis and get the perfect jean. You know what I'm saying? Beautiful stuff, baby. Let's talk about this, boys and girls. Let's talk about the top 5. Let's talk about some portal work. Oh, Billy cooking up the portal. So what's interesting here? I love this. I do some research. It's in my head. The math's always in my head, but I like to get the back up. This is the recruiting rankings from 247. It differs from On3, and I actually like both. I like the fact that they're widely different because 247 approaches it just from how they attacked the portal. On3 combines it. They take the average of what left and what came back in and kind of give you that. So it's drastically different because, and I think that's how On3 looks at it. I like because it kind of encompasses the entire transfer portal. 247 just approaches is like, okay, here's their just zero, right? And what we brought in, what did they do? Both, in my opinion, turned out very well. So this is what we brought in, finishing 5th, okay, with 15 overall commits, with an average rating, with a score of 66.9. I think the average player rating was like 89.3, if I'm not mistaken. Let me go back here, just make sure I have that number correct so you guys know what the average. So 89.27, excuse me. So let's take a look at this, right? So A&M is ahead of us with 69.4. They had 27 guys come in to our 15, and their average rating was 88.4. And you see they're only 3 points higher with 12 more commits that came in. Massive overhaul for Texas A&M. They had an okay recruiting class, I think overall like 19th, 20th. Outside that number 1 overall recruiting class a couple years ago with Jimbo that has also left, haven't really done the greatest in recruiting. This is why I'm so hard on Texas A&M. Love Josh Pate. We talk about Josh Pate all the time. I was talking to my buddy the other day at work. He's a Georgia fan. He's like, yeah, I love Josh Pate the other day because he gave Georgia some love. Look, this is Josh's job. Josh always is going to pat somebody on the back. He's never very critical. That's what he's supposed to do. This is not me being a hater. He does a great job with it. When I come and hate, I understand it's biased. I'm a hater. I'm not a hater of A&M. I don't understand the unnecessary hype. Somebody came on the top 15 for the SEC. A&M was ahead of Florida, Auburn, Kentucky. I was like, what are we doing here, guys? Like, off of what? Doesn't make any sense to me. It truly doesn't. And again, although they had a great portal, it's a lot of turnover, okay? A lot of turnover. Can they have an impact? Can they do some great things? Without a doubt. Alabama is an interesting one, which I'm going to get into when I pull up the On3. 73.19 with 15 commits, an average rate of 90.7. Great job, DeBoer. If you go to On3, this is where because Alabama, I'm like, yes, I know they did well bringing guys in. They rank 68th on On3's overall transfer portal ranking. Florida ranks 13th. The reason why Alabama ranks so low is they lost 34 guys. They lost half their damn team. And a lot of talented guys, not just names. And I'll get into our names who we lost. One of them was a walk-on or a 0-star. Another one was a kicker. And one of them was Kitna. Just put that in perspective of who left for Florida. Kicker, Kitna, and a 2-3-star guy. Right? The rest of them, we can argue that they could have been something. But let's just put that in perspective of what left for Florida. Alabama, we know what they lost. Lost a lot of potential talent that was coming in. I'm not saying the board can't fix that, but that's why I like looking at both because, yes, the talent they were able to bring in, fantastic, but they lost did it even itself out? According to On3, not so much. Not so much. Oregon here at 73.46, dominated. Them in Texas, crushed because they're number 1 and 2, I believe, with Ole Miss up at the top because they basically just told people to leave and brought in who they wanted with quality and quantity, Texas and Oregon. They absolutely crushed. Ole Miss, in my opinion, did a great job. We'll get into them in just a moment. But Oregon and Texas are going to be somebody to watch out for because of what they went and did. Full circle. Full circle. They did a great job on all accords. And then Ole Miss, of course, number 1. They lined in a lot of top-tier talent. They, again, where does it set them up for next year? We know how they recruit. They don't. So they had the ability, they had the room to go out and just land a lot of big guys in free agency. My whole point of saying all of this is you've got to be excited where Florida is because think about what I just said about all of these teams. Oregon, light years ahead. I think they're doing a great job. A&M, this was a cleanup, let's get caught up kind of year, right? And we're right behind them. Florida, which I said time in the last couple of months now, were buyers in the portal, attacked it aggressively but conservatively where they didn't lose too much. Coming in with a nice, healthy squad. I know we talked before, we're turning 55%, I believe, of our staff. all things are chugging towards the right direction. So when I start talking about our schedule and why I think we can be where I think we can be headed into that Georgia game, it's all these things that I'm saying right here. Okay. Every team we play is beneath us right now for portal and overall recruiting, except Texas, Ole Miss, not A&M, but A&M obviously they're not ahead of us in recruiting, but Texas and Ole Miss and Georgia. And those three teams, if I said we're gonna have 3 losses, I would be okay with circling those 3 teams as losses. They are built and designed to get it done this year. Like if those teams lose, they're gonna be detrimental for all those teams involved. Ole Miss is what FSU was last year. They better win. They better win. Because after this year, Ole Miss is going to be what Washington and FSU was this year. Oregon and Georgia, they're still building. Ole Miss went all in. Ole Miss went all in. They better win the whole damn squad. So interesting stuff. Loved talking about it. Loved seeing it. Now that it fully is full circle, I haven't heard what happened with Badger and who's moving along. Those things we don't know yet. We're unaware of that. And again, a lot of people were hyping up this Badger pickup. I saw some people arguing about it. I think Nick wrote an article from the guys at Read and React about, again, Ricky Pearsall, first-round draft pick. He was 68th overall PFF. Badger was 76. Badger was 76 with poor quarterback play. Okay? We know what Ricky was with Heisman, with the Heisman favorite this year. So, and we must be asking, well, how are we going to guard him? How are we going to protect Graham Mertz so he can have a Heisman type like year? Well, that's a great segue. That's a great question. You guys are all over the ball today, and I love it. And that's this guy right here. This article, I was hyping him up at the beginning of the season. Some people were kind of giving, I think kind of brushing it off a little bit, but it's starting to come around. I feel like I'm always ahead of the game. You know what I mean? I'm just always, it's like sometimes you can be too soon. Sometimes you can be a little bit too early in the cycle, and it doesn't stick as much. And that's on me. When you're just dialed in like that, it sometimes just goes over the head of others. But Jake Slaughter was somebody who was a Mullen recruit, came in 2021, and we'll look at his PFF score. But since then, it's been a Billy and a Rob Sell development. So although he was a Mullen recruit, you've got to give the development and the production on the field to Rob Sell, which is something that has been in question, something we've talked about time and time again. Again, what Rob Sale has done 2 years ago, which was his second year, Jake Slaughter's second year, which that was one of our best lines we've had in quite some time. People argue because Anthony Richardson ran out the pocket, whatever. Regardless, a lot of talent went to the NFL from that line. Last year was obviously atrocious, but we're now seeing this year is going to be a full year of, two cycles of seeing development. Jake Slaughter's headed into his redshirt sophomore year, his 4th year, could go to the draft after this, be exciting to see him stay. Barber's going into his last and final year. They bring in some 2 big guys with a lot of talent, Emmanuel and Crenshaw. Damian George, I think I talked about on the last show, Napier had a lot of great things to say about him in his transition to right guard, which it excites me. So I think that's a big question mark. A lot of concern is starting to come together, and obviously people are starting to take notice about Jake Slaughter, which I love and excited about. This was the top 10 centers for last year, according to PFF, obviously. Take a look at this. Jake Slaughter, 77.8. Jackson Powers Johnson, who obviously went to the NFL draft this year. I'm looking over to my right here because Cody was sitting here. I remember when he got drafted, he had Jackson Powers very high on his list for centers. Was not one of the top centers to go. A few others went before him. I don't remember. I think Nugent might have been one of those guys. I recognize that name that may have went before Jackson Powers. Nugent, again, being part of the back-to-back defending champion, offensive line defending champion. They also won the Natty, but they won the best offensive line 2 years in a row, which made Georgia very upset. That's why I know these things. So a part of a very good staff. So look what Jake Slaughter's sitting behind. Georgia, which we know what they've done with the trenches, SEC talent. Michigan won the national championship. Miami, Matt Lee, kudos to those guys. Their offensive line, they've been building some great stuff. Then Tulane, SMU, North Texas, Arkansas State. It's like, well, how can we go get one of those guys? Great questions. I don't know. Then Oregon. So if we're headed into next year, where's Jake Slaughter sitting on this list? All of a sudden, he's top-tier center heading into next season. And again, Oregon, Michigan, and Georgia, arguably all right there at the end of Final Four, having a top center. So pieces are coming together. That's where my head's at. You guys know how I function. You'll know how I operate. So love it. Love hearing the news about Jake Slaughter. I also, who said this? It was Max Chadwick. So who's Max Chadwick? He works. He's a PFF analyst. I thought about hitting him up, getting him on the show. They run their own show on the PFF college football. Maybe bringing him on here and picking his brain a little bit on the PFF just overall grading scale. It's a very respective source because it has a very unbiased approach to the game. So I would love to pick his brain a little bit. I'd imagine he has some intel on players and position groups, given he's an analyst. Could be a fun conversation. I don't know. I'm going to do my due diligence and reach out to him because I love talking ball and I love expanding my knowledge. And how do you do that? You talk to somebody who's smarter and better at it than you. And I think Max Chadwick obviously is a smart guy, clearly on the great things that he has to say about Jake Slaughter. So good stuff. The chat was bumping tonight. We had a super chat that I missed from Mr. Famous here. Mr. Stephen Harris says $2 says go Gators. Exit the chat, hit the like button, come back. I love the instructions. You know what I'm saying? I love it. Well, guys, we almost went an hour long. Huge show, great show. I love the Monday shows. They're fantastic. 300, almost 400 people in here. Be sure to smash the like button, obviously. You guys have been showing a ton of support on the show, on the channel lately. It means the absolute world to me. To be able to, again, I always have to remind myself how incredible this is and how thankful and grateful I am to have all of y'all to support it and love this show and appreciate what we do here every single day. Shout out to Harris, Swolder, and Cody for always dealing with me and having my back. So I appreciate those guys tremendously. But it's incredible to be able to turn on this damn camera and you guys tune in. I do love you and appreciate you. Also, to kind of just some more PSA, more scheduling announcements coming up. Like I said, Wednesday, Mr. David Waters will be on the show. Should be an absolute banger. It will be. But starting in July, we're going to start a new show on Tuesday mornings. Would love your thoughts and opinions about that with an overall just encompassing college football. I love it. Love the game. Always wanted to bring more with it. Kind of similar to our High Top College Game Day. So we're going to incorporate some more all-around college game day shows throughout the year in this upcoming year. Got big plans for this upcoming season. So I love it. Levi says, thanks for the great show, Shelton. Can't wait for the rest of the season. It's going to be good stuff. Go Phillies, suck it, Muddy. Can't wait for the broadcast from the cruise ship. I'm sweating the cruise ship. I'm going to keep it a buck with y'all real quick because I think the Wi-Fi is going to be dog water. I don't think we're going to be able to live stream it. So I'm planning on maybe doing a show beforehand and then just having it post. I don't know, but it's stressing me out. I'm going to be honest with you. I hate missing shows. I missed one of my entire life of this thing, and it's because I got stuck by a plane. And I don't like missing them. So, we'll see. We will see. Who's your cousin, Muddy? Dave Waters is your cousin? That's wild. Well, you guys know what to do. Smash the like button. Subscribe. Stay tuned. Wednesday, 8:35. Y'all know the drill. It's the best day of the week. I want everybody and anybody to be there. Dave Waters is going to be there. There's no Gators breakdown to watch because he's going to be on our show. So let's bring all the Gator Nation together. Let's rock and roll. Let's dial it in. You guys have a great Monday. Okay? Memorial Day weekend next Monday. So could be a lit vlog next Monday. Who knows? We'll see. I'll see you guys next time. Peace and love, baby.